At Publicis Sapient,
Diversity, equity, and inclusion is our culture and strategy.
and not just the right thing to do.
It is strategic, apart from being the right thing to do. I feel great that we have spread the word on how important this is to us. I personally took some time to understand what equity means and what it meant to be equitable. It's a personal journey, and I'm glad that Publicis Sapient India inspired me to take this journey.
To my mind, being inclusive at workplace, it should come naturally, though in reality, it seldom does. At Publicis Sapient, we make it a point to talk about how our colleagues need to be treated, how we are serious about having equitable opportunities. I'm confident that if I needed any support at some time, I'm in a safe place to ask for it and get it from my colleagues without any fear.
Many colleagues signed up to bring in awareness, vocal advocacy, and meaningful programs on a variety of subjects. We have efforts on inclusion and career advancement of women, LGBTQI folks, people with disabilities, caregivers, creating awareness and resource material on mental health, and making generational diversity a winning combination. The leadership cheered for us throughout, and all of this makes it my ikigai.
I've led women career advancement efforts for some years now. Hackathon in specifically is our pride. It's an aspirational flagship hackathon event where every team is led by a woman. These women are role models. I have enjoyed learning from each one of these efforts and people. We have a sponsorship program also for our women leaders. We encourage people to be courageous and to thrive at work.
Last year, I was part of Transformational Leadership Program, where I met people from the trans community, heard their stories, spent an entire day doing different activities with them. I've attended more Pride sessions because it touched me, and I continue to mentor people from the community. I decided that I have to do what I can to provide the community a safe and dignified place in society and in our workplace.
Over the years, we have been deciphering the meaning of being a true ally. A true ally is someone who visibly supports a cause. We spoke about a variety of programs through our BRGs, be it sessions on pride, accessibility trainings to support people with disabilities, brave space conversations on domestic violence, or rigorous focus on mental health. It has been a personal journey, and I feel inspired.
So I'm a technologist with Publicis Sapient for many years, and I have been challenged multiple times in the organization to do greater things. And I lead the initiative for persons with disabilities inclusion with my colleagues. And this year we have done sign language classes where I got to learn a lot. And we are also doing accessibility hackathon, and we are also reaching out to campuses to hire persons with disabilities. Leading hiring of diverse talent has become one of the most visible efforts for Publicis Sapient. We had to plan, experiment, learn, and repeat all of these steps again. Every effort from strategic hiring of women at all levels and leaders, auditing our processes, and making our job descriptions more inclusive, or launching a career returnee program like Spring is a journey. It is challenging, creative, and very, very enriching.
What an amazing way to start this session. Good evening, everyone. I'm Harish Panchbhai, welcoming you to the 5th year of Out and Loud Pune International Quick Film Festival's panel discussion themed Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, Cultures to Communities. First, I would sincerely like to thank our sponsors, Barclays, IBM, Publicis Sapient, Working with Pride, and all of our lovely contributors out there. Now, before we start, just like Publicis Sapient, we would also like to quickly show you some highlights from our sponsors, IBM and Barclays. Tech, over to you.
What does it mean to be Barclays?
What is our role in society?
What do we believe to be right?
How do we get things done?
Finance is the oxygen of the economy. Acting transparently and with expertise, we deploy finance responsibly to support people and businesses.
We have the capability and capital, the operational resilience and the commitment to make a real and lasting difference to the economic lives of customers and communities.
This is as true today as it was when our bank was founded over 330 years ago.
Acting with empathy and integrity, we aim to be a leader in the profession of banking and to engender trust amongst our key stakeholders.
We understand the power of building a supportive and inclusive culture for everybody, knowing that we make a bigger difference when we pull together as one team.
We operate with energy and imagination, championing innovation and sustainability to make a positive and enduring difference, to take pride in leaving things better than we found them.
New ideas and technologies can help customers and communities to unlock opportunities.
Our success is judged not only by commercial performance, but also by our contribution to society and how we act responsibly for the common good and the long term, because these outcomes are mutually dependent.
We are at our best when our clients,
Customers,
Communities,
And colleagues.
all progress.
If our purpose is why we exist, our 5 values are our moral compass.
they are the fundamentals of who we are and what we believe is right.
our values are respect,
Integrity,
Service.
Excellence.
And stewardship.
Barclays people have a Barclays mindset. It's how we get things done. Empower.
Trust and support each other to deliver. Make decisions with those closest to the topic. Include diverse perspectives. Celebrate success and learn from failure.
Challenge.
question whether things can be done better, use insights based on data to inform decisions, be curious about how we can adapt and improve, speak up and be open to alternative viewpoints.
Drive.
Focus on outcomes. Deliver with pace. Be passionate and ambitious about what we do. Take personal responsibility. Actively build collaborative relationships to get things done.
Our success as a bank cannot be separated from our culture, and the power of who we are is greatest when we are bound together by a common purpose, shared values, and a single mindset.
This is what it means to be Barclays.
There's something strange in my heart right now. I cannot tell you if I'm gonna go out or break down. If you can help me, my friend, I really don't wanna see your baby, baby, just standing on the floor.
Well, thank you, sponsors. And my God, these videos are so inspiring and motivating. Anyway, to take it forward, I hope that you're all keeping safe in these pressing times. The time we are living in right now is, needless to say, one of the most strangest and the toughest times. As a part of the core team, I promise that each and every one of you is in our thoughts and our prayers. DEI, or D&I, this is a spectrum that, according to me, shakes the norm. It makes people uncomfortable first, for them to then widen their thought process and look at equity in its totality. Today, we aim to discuss this rapidly changing and ever evolving space to understand where the best of the best leaders and organizations stand and what they are doing to further broaden the hemisphere of DEI. Without wasting any more time, let me introduce you to the panel and the panel to you. We have Prachi Rastogi, Diversity and Inclusion Leader, Asia Pacific for IBM. Prachi Rastogi is the DEI leader for APAC in IBM. She has experience in human resource across healthcare, IT, private equity, and technology industry. Her current role involves ensuring gender balance at executive roles, inclusion of LGBT plus communities, and an accessible environment for people with disabilities. She is responsible to create the climate that fosters respect for differences, stimulates innovation, encourages collaboration, and allows employees to work productively in a culturally diverse environment. Apart from her day job, she facilitates mindfulness sessions in corporate world and educational institutes. She believes that collaboration amongst human and increased awareness is what will help us survive and succeed in coming times. Prachi, welcome to the panel.
Thank you very much, Harish. How lovely to be sharing this space with you.
Likewise. I'll quickly move on to our next panel. We have Dwight Cook, co-founder working with Pride. Dwight Cook is a seasoned organizational transformation executive with an experience spanning more than 25 years in 5 different companies. He has led over 30 organizational transformations in 6 different countries, and he is currently focused on building a leadership development program for early career minorities. Dwight, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks, Dwight. Moving on, we have Param Kaur, Director, People Success, Publicis Sapient. Param is an absolute adventure junkie. As a part of Publicis Sapient, she also leads the core BRG work for India with 6 tracks on caregivers, pride, enable for PWD, Viva Women, mental health, and generational diversity. She also works towards social inclusion as a volunteer with few NGOs on rural women empowerment and geriatric care for senior care homes. Param, I'm happy to have you, and I would honestly later ask you, how can you do so much? This is so amazing. I mean, wow. Moving on, we have Krishna Visweswaran. Krishna is the CTO of Barclays UK Technology and co-head Barclays Spectrum India. He has worked for 30 years in various technology domains in the US, Japan, and India. Krishna is passionate about social inclusion and intersection of technology and society and learning new things on any subject. Krishna and Param, I'm so happy to have you both here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and hello, everyone.
Thanks so much. I think I shouldn't waste more time. I shall directly get, because I know that there are a lot of people waiting there to probably, communicate with you, interact with you, and get to know a little more about diversity and inclusion, or as we now call it, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'll start right away. When it comes to DEI, it is perceived differently by different organizations. We see that every organization will have a different focus point at any given time. To start with, I wanted to understand what DEI or DNI stands for you as of today. I say today because I sincerely feel that this is an ever-evolving environment and there is so much scope to it. So let's start with Prachi.
Thanks, Harish. Diversity, equity, and inclusion means a lot to us. It is a business imperative for us, not just a good to have. And what essentially it comes down to for IBM and IBMers is that all IBMers bring their whole selves to work and create a positive impact on the society at large. And that, when the two come together, that's most significant for us. And for that, we really need to work hard, and we do that on leadership responsibility. So DNI is not really an HR responsibility and is run majorly by the business leaders at IBM, and that makes a huge lot of difference. Second is employee experience. How do we change employee experience right at the water cooler conversations is a matter of concern to us at all times. In the last 109 years that we've lived we've ensured that diversity and inclusion becomes a reality at IBM. And third very important thing is being an active, bold ally and an upstander in the external market. Having the external evidence, speaking up when it's important is key to us at IBM.
That is so good to know, Prachi. Thank you so much for this. Krishna, I'll move on to you. Can you throw some light about what DEI means to you today?
Certainly. In Barclays, I think there's a core respect, right? If you look at the values that we espouse, the first one is respect, right? And that is basically looking at each and every person that works with us, our stakeholders, external stakeholders, all of these folks as human beings, individuals with different perspectives, different focuses, and a different life sort of experience coming in, right? And how do you value that? How do you respect that? And how do you look at including all of that into our own sort of experience, the things that we deliver that caters to these individuals, right? It's how do you respect that? How do you bring in the inclusion? And then how do you treat everybody equitably, right? Because inclusion is sort of one step. And then how do you provide equal opportunities to everyone, including people who may be disadvantaged, people who may be, for example, in the context here, right? People who might be in the closet. And as Prachi said, right, you have to be cognizant that you can't just go around asking people, why aren't you married yet, and so on, right? That is so not even 20th century, it's 19th, 18th century, right? And things like that. And then just looking at the variation, the diversity of people, how do we bring all of that talent in and really take advantage of that diversity of thought, that diversity of experience, and build a company that everybody is really aspiring to work in. So that's
Thanks so much, Krishna. Thank you so much. Yes, I think what you said is so true about casual conversations about people going and asking why aren't they getting married or why aren't they married. I call it the thought process of people passe and people present, and I think that change needs to be made in so many ways. But that's my thought. Param, what about yours?
Yeah, I mean, up until about a few years ago, we actually called the strategic direction inclusion and diversity. I think what actually strikes people that you understand that it's D&I, and a lot of people have asked us, what is I&D? I think because we started with the thought process of inclusion, and the leadership does believe that if we practice inclusion, diversity is an outcome of it, if you know what I mean. It's only about two to 3 years back that we kind of changed our structure, framework, thinking, policies to include equity. It's a hard conversation and an uncomfortable conversation, as we all know. But I think the main focus, the two-pronged focus, strategic focus has been around creating, gender equitable policies and living them through our communities and, on the ground practices, affinity groups, conversations, awareness, and also hard matrices for our leaders. So it's top down as well as bottoms up, because that's the way to actually permeate our attitudes, behaviors, people experiences, and the way we become an organization which is comfortable not only to have this conversation, but to retain, to hire, retain, and grow diverse people in the sphere of where we work and what their careers could be.
Thanks, Param. I think that's so good to know. I&D, I did not know about this particular route that was taken. I&D for India is, I think that's something we all need at this point of time. One I&D to another I&D. And yes, respect and individuality and inclusion stands as foundation to DEI. And Dwight, how about you? What do you want to say? Firstly, thank you so much. It's way early in the morning, I think, for you. And you joined all the way from the US, Saat Samandar Par, as we say in Hindi. So I want to know about your perspective on DEI.
Thank you. I also like to add the word belonging. I think that there's some organizations that are formally adding that term, and many of them do that in their strategy. But it's all a whole bunch of different dimensions, some of which we don't understand yet, and we'll learn more as we go. But it's a journey about how we are really going to fully use and leverage our vast human resource knowledge, our vast human resources to make the world better and to make your company better, your family better. And I think it's a journey we're all on, and we're all at different places, and we don't know all the dimensions of it yet. We'll learn as we go.
Very true, Dwight. I think that really holds very true in so many ways. And as we go further, we're seeing this evolution that's happening. We have belonging now. We have the core equity at its at its core, as I'm saying. So it's an ever evolving sphere, and I'm grateful that I'm getting to learn about these perspectives that you have for today. And my next question, basically, I basically wanted to understand from you all that after working with numerous companies and numerous cultures within and outside of India as well, how difficult is it to individualize, unify, or even to speak of Indian corporate working environment? I don't want to do a chota muh badi baat here, but I started my career just few years ago. Maybe I started in 2012. I've seen a transformational change since then. Where we've come way beyond culturally. But I still see that Indian hierarchy, Indian corporates to be plagued by this hierarchical system. So I wanted to pick on this and understand the cultural differences that we are living through in corporates in India. So Krishna, how about you? We'll start with you first.
Certainly. And it's not just the Indian corporate culture, right? It's the Indian culture overall. So, for example, when we get new grads coming in from college, everybody calls the existing people sir, right? All of the grads. And you have to keep telling them, don't call me sir, don't call her ma'am, like just call us by our names, right? We're your colleagues, we're here to work with you, right? And talking about sort of evolution, right? It's not just India. So when I was young, I was working in the US, right? You can see the gray hair, so I'm no longer young. Over there, I was actually an impoverished H-1B sort of employee and so on. And I had a roommate, right? We were sharing a 2-bed apartment, and there would be comments from my boss about the fact that I was living with another guy in an apartment, right? So this is, it's somewhat pervasive. It's changed much more in other countries. Over here, I think it has definitely changed now, but I think the rate of change has to improve, and it's up to us, right? It's up to the leadership in organizations to show the way. It's up to government to show the way. And what we can do is build safe spaces within the company, right? And this is critical. And in Barclays, in other companies that I've worked in, multinationals, there's been a concerted effort where you have education in terms of inclusive behavior, inclusive conversations, and even sort of what are subconscious cues that you might be sending, which could be interpreted, picked up, and maybe even misconstrued to mean something completely different, right? So it's really important, number one, to sort of internalize that view that all human beings have their own journey, and your goal is to respect that journey and to treat everybody with an equal amount of respect and consideration. And that's what you expect in turn, right? And that's the philosophy I see a lot of organizations adopting now, right? And we need to see that in wider society as well.
Thanks, Krishna. I totally second that. Prachi, how about you? Can we hear your thought on this?
Thanks a lot, Krishna. That was lovely to hear that all human beings have a journey of their own. And I see that for corporates and countries as well. I look at diversity and inclusion. I lead diversity and inclusion for APAC. So 5-6 different markets. And I see how different they are on the surface, yet there is something very, very similar. So there is a long journey that we all have taken. We've arrived at a beautiful place, but yet there's a long journey ahead. So hierarchy is everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. A few things are, a few things have changed in many other countries. A few things are taking more time in India for sure. The systemic bias is huge. However, especially the multinational organizations are changing the environment hugely, and employees working in these multinational environments worldwide are changing things at the dining table conversations as well. Diversity and inclusion conversations are not just confined to workplaces anymore. These are the employees who go back home and, if need, train their parents, train their spouses, train their partners, train their children, and get trained and make a positive impact worldwide. And will it take time? Yes, of course. Maybe, it's a constant journey. We may not ever really arrive ever. We'll just keep arriving all the time. And of course, it's true that some organizations are more hierarchical, some countries are more hierarchical, and India is definitely one of them. It's taking its own time, but things are changing for good. And I think it's really important at this stage for all of us to be upstandard, speaking up when things are not going right, speaking up as an ally, speaking up for people who you know are marginalized, speaking up where you think something more political is happening, something very hierarchical is happening, like Krishna mentioned about sirring and mamming people. So really stopping it right when it happens, that don't sir ma'am me. Let's stop this sir ma'am culture, because this is really slavery, and that is how many countries like ours is conditioned, and it's up to us to break it, and the time is now.
I'm so happy that you guys are getting this point up, because even I honestly I found it difficult when I started working that few of my peers were calling the seniors with their with ma'am and sir, and I kind of was not into this regimentalized approach, and it was a struggle for me when I had to call someone ma'am and sir. But fortunately now I'm in a working environment where people are the respect doesn't come out of these terms of sirs and ma'ams, these colonial terms. Respect comes from how you behave with a person, and that's now visible. And I'm glad to be in an organization like that myself. Dwight, how about you? Can we hear from you on this one, please?
Sure. I think that Krishna's point about sir brings out this idea of power distance. And certainly there's a difference in cultures around how comfortable people are with power distance. I think that the companies are all in a different place on this journey. And there's not one particular route that is best. I think we're charting new routes all the time. I think that that technology and social media have made things much more visible, and we're much more connected globally. And so people are expecting more of their jobs. And in India, I see huge changes. It's happening very rapidly right now. 5 years ago, when my husband and I first came to India as expats, our company was very nervous. The 377 hadn't been read down yet. There was all sorts of concern about would we be safe, and the legal department recommended that we not come. And when it finally was approved that we would come, they insisted that we have a living quarters that had 24-hour security, because people were very concerned. And now, we've got the courts and the legislature considering same-sex or equal marriage rights. So there's been huge changes. DEI, I think, is growing very rapidly in India, and India in some way is claiming their role or their history of being a very diverse, celebrating diversity in many ways. I think there's a long ways to go globally, but I've seen a lot of great progress.
Thanks, Dwight. I think having you and Neil in India was, I think, one of the best things that has happened to so many people, because connecting with you has been transformational, and we'll get to that very soon. But Param, can I have a word from you also on this one? I would really like to know from your end as well.
I'm going to just add on to what everyone heard from Krishna, Prachi, and Dwight. I think that the evolution is happening very quickly. But I would also like to say that I think at a time where we are, we don't have a choice. I don't think we have a choice, but to be respectful of gender equity and inclusion and diversity. For an example, my daughter studies in a college, an Indian university, which has only gender neutral washrooms, right? And in our parents' orientation, there was an audible gasp from parents across the whole auditorium when that was brought to light, right? And we were welcomed to say and see and go around the orientation and the walkthrough of the campus. But it was very clear that they had, kind of welcomed that whole change when this university was set up just about 6 or 7 years back, right? So, like, for example, so the new generations that are coming up, they are conscious, aware, and they have embraced this change as part of their life. While we as corporates are trying to speak up, create awareness, and be more vocal. As Prachi said, that standing on the fence is just not what we need today. We need people to be more vocal and call out for that change, and call it out when you see something which is not right. Be it behaviors, actions, attitudes, deep-rooted biases, exchanges that you see across in water coolers or informal settings, and things like that. So speaking up and speaking for the change and living the change is very, very important, because we don't have a choice.
Thanks, Param. I think that's so cool. And needless to say, yes, we have seen a huge change. It is just, I think, 2 years ago that I completed my MBA. I had taken a break from my professional life to do my MBA, and the kind of change that I saw within my classmates back in 2009 versus in 2019 was so different, and it was so refreshing to see that change. And I'm quite happy to have to hear that colleges now have gender neutral bathrooms and all, and I just hope that it really evolves. But Param, I think I'll start with you for the next question, where I wanted to know that what made you passionate about DEI? Was there any incidents or any certain situation that happened which made you think that you should pursue DEI as a part of your career?
I don't think there was a trigger. Okay. I genuinely believe that I was privileged. I came from a background where, like you said, I'm an adventurous. It's because my parents allowed me to follow my passions. Way back, many, many years ago, while I was in school, I went for treks with a 22-member team where I was the only female, right? So have been on that journey since. And when I realized, actually, during my college days, and I've been working with NGOs in the space, social space, for a long time, I realized that it was kind of important to acknowledge that not everybody came from that freedom and privilege background, and there were social differences, and inclusion was a very big thing that people suffered from. When young women, when they returned to careers, their jobs were at stake. And I think it was an evolving journey, because I started leading when I joined Publicis Sapient 9 years back. I started leading the chapter of, it used to be called the Women's Leadership Network, and which has now evolved to Viva Women, to see how we could create voices for some of them who felt marginalized, people who felt they weren't giving equitable opportunities to grow. And there were not enough policy safeguards to ensure that practices on the ground were equitable, that managers were of the mindset to be flexible and not deprive people of opportunities if someone was on a career break. Not to say for, let's say, a gentleman who wanted to take a little more paternity leave because it was needed at home and be a primary caregiver beyond the number of days which the policy said. So becoming advocates and voices for marginalized and underrepresented, I think, came naturally to me. And thereby, over a period of time, inclusion and understanding the community and having friends from the community, very very close friends from the community, and hearing their stories and the challenges they faced, and understanding how we can create spaces and careers for people with disabilities and difficulties and create equitable journeys for them to live very very I should say enriching careers as they go ahead in their lives. That's been a journey for me, but it's been a wonderful space for me to work on. I don't think there was a single trigger, but whatever has happened to propel me in this journey, I'm very very grateful.
That's amazing. That's so good to know, Param. Dwight, how about you? We can have you speak next.
So I think that we are all together in this journey. I think that we're well, I think that I came out of it a little bit differently. I was a productivity expert, and I had a passion about making teams work better, and that evolved into really understanding the power of diversity in making teams better, and making organizations perform better, and how through leveraging the individual and bringing the individual in by recognizing the differences, built the foundation for a team to then unify on a common goal and bring everybody along together. That tool and that power, I think, is what really inspired me and brought me into the D&I space.
That's great to know, Dwight. I actually, I'm getting to know more about you from this session. Prachi, how about you?
My point of epiphany was due to personal journey on mindfulness. I started my journey of mindfulness meditation a few years, almost a decade ago, a little more than that. And then I realized that the more we are self-aware, the more we move inwards, we really can appreciate the beauty of being diverse, like it is in nature. Look at a biodiverse park, or look at the biodiversity that nature brings, and what beauty it brings to our lives. And so it was very deep understanding that I was blessed with because of mindfulness, that when we are so one from within, we have the capability and the strength to be able to include all the diversity that human beings have. That is one. Another is a simple thing. I'm a woman, grown up with all the systemic bias that exists in the society. I come from a middle-class, humble family, never got married, so faced a lot of wrath because of that. And the 20 years that I've spent in the corporate world, not once have I been singled out because I'm not so-called settled as per the society. So look at the difference. Look at what beauty this education inclusion is bringing to the world. So for me, it's simple. It was mindfulness that took me inwards, and it was being a woman who realized that I'm still privileged. I can speak up. I'm educated. I earn enough for myself, and there are many who do not have the privilege. So it's time to work hard.
Wow, that's great. That's so nice to hear, Prachi. Krishna, how about you?
Sure. I'd like to start with one key thing that Param mentioned and Prachi also talked about, right, which is privilege. And really, if you, one of the big realizations in my life was that I grew up privileged, right? Even though I was a middle class person in India, I grew up privileged. This is not something that so many people have the opportunity to sort of deal with equitably over here. And I felt and I feel that it is my responsibility to break some of those barriers, to be an example in terms of how can we show equality, how can we walk the path of treating everybody with respect, everybody with equality, and what is the best way I can do that, right? And I specifically adopted the LGBT plus cause as something I should focus on, because these people, right, people who have a different sexual orientation in India, especially, right, they're hiding in the open, and they live in a state of fear, right? In India, there's such stigma, there's such negative connotation. These things are changing now, but it's so much ingrained bias against them that I thought I should step up and do something about this. I should be vocal, I should be visible in terms of being equitable, being visible in acceptance, in inclusion, and so on.
Thanks so much, to be there as an ally to various causes, Krishna. I think it's so important to have people like all of you in our leadership in the organizations. I'm a little conscious of time, so I'll quickly move on to my next question. Krishna, I will start with you. From you, Prachi and Param, I wanted to understand, how did your organizations adapt to DEI work in the last 2 years of 2020 and 2021? I'm focusing on these 2 years because, well, work from home, this is my office right now. This has been the situation for literally everyone across the world. So how has DEI transformed during these 2 years? And are there any best practices that you would like to talk about from your organization?
Sure. So I'll go first, right? Yeah, so the first thing you see is I've got my pronouns out, and we encourage people to show support by putting our pronouns out, by visibly being inclusive. So the other thing I sometimes do is, for example, let me see if I do this, right? And I've got a rainbow background, and I communicate that I am inclusive. And when people start talking about, hey, why do you have pronouns out there? Why do you have a rainbow background? It's a great introduction for me to now say, hey, this is how I show inclusion. This is how I embrace diversity, and I want to sort of show my respect and appreciation for everybody, right? So that's and the organization, I think, has been really supportive, really sort of pushing the agenda in terms of inclusion and acceptance and equitable treatment for everybody. And these are the kinds of little things that you can do while sitting at home that shows that you are somebody who values this.
Absolutely. I think these are the small things that can make a massive difference. I remember it was last year that I changed, and I put my pronouns up on LinkedIn. And after that, there were so many people asking me, what is this about? And what are you doing exactly? And why are you putting it out? So there was so much of, conversation that was created out of this small move. And I'm grateful that you're doing that as well. Param, how about your organization? How is Publicis Sapient making this change?
I think, to be very honest, we've had a transformational leap in the last 2 years. We have introduced and updated our policies and programs, and kind of brought in new initiatives and programs. I'm going to quickly touch upon a couple. We launched our equal employer opportunity policy, which is the EEO, where we have reasonable accommodation for all people with difficulties or disabilities joining the organization. And that would be done separately for them, basis the need that they have. We have paraplegics, we have people with visual disability, audio disability. This year we have gone to, specially for campus, to have an entire batch for people with disabilities, and they will be integrated into our programs and our delivery functions, right? Secondly, we've had hiring panels where we make sure that for all senior leadership hiring, we will have gender equal panels, which is not easy because our representation at senior leadership is at the moment at around less than 20%. So having gender neutral or gender equal panels is tough, but we have put some of those matrices in place. Our insurance policies cover HIV plus reassignment surgeries. It's only very recently we found that we are amongst the very few companies in India who cover gender reassignment surgeries as part of our policy coverage. We cover partners without having to declare anything. It's a simple form that you fill up. While we understood that some companies while the policy is there that to cover partners, the whole process of sign up is so difficult that it's almost like people can't take advantage of it. We've also taken care of certain practices. This year we've had a huge successful batch of women career returnees who have taken career breaks in their journeys. So making sure that we pave the way for them to come back and have successful careers back at Publicis Sapient, which takes a lot of time integrating them, training them up, and then making them successful in the roles that they will be playing. We've had Leading with Pride, where we've had reverse mentoring for our leaders from people in the community, and they have learned and gained and felt enriched from these interactions. We also, like you heard in the audio and the video that was played early, we've institutionalized sign language classes. We've looked at all our systems to make sure that it is accessible. We have live captioning for all the town halls and the leader sessions that we have. So I think we've made a transformational journey in the last 2 years to make sure that we're inclusive, and we are thinking about all areas of diversity, and we're making people feel comfortable to bring their whole self to work.
Thanks so much for that. I think it's amazing. Publicis Sapient never ceases to amaze me when it comes to all these things. It's just so impressive to know about all these things. Prachi, what about you? What is IBM up to in the last 2 years of crazy time?
Param Krishna, it was so lovely to hear, beautiful to hear your journey, especially in the last 2 years. Thank you for sharing. So Harish, an interesting question to ask an IBMer. Our equal opportunity policy got introduced in 1954, and gender affirmation surgery started in India early 2000. So it's a very environment that has been inclusive for the LGBT plus community. I'm just talking about India right now, way before 2017 when 377 was read down. So, however, did things change last year, this year? Absolutely, yes. IBM is famous to have a flexible work environment. So we were already, a lot of us were working from home, part-time or full-time. What changed was that some people who were, let's say people with disabilities who were working full-time at work for any reason. And, immediately when 99% of the IBMers, when the first wave happened last year, in India, we knew that everything that was available for them at work in terms of accommodation was to happen at their home in no time. So that happened immediately. We also knew that a lot of people from the LGBT plus community are not in the safest of spaces at home. There is domestic violence. They're not the best of conditions. And there is isolation. Many of them live alone. So we created groups where their mental, physical wellness is taken care of. We were completely engaged with them, with a lot of women, especially in the middle-age group, a lot of people from the LGBT plus community and people with disabilities. Of course, all employees, but especially these groups of people. The other thing, especially last year, what we did was that we also introduced humor to a lot of our programs. A lot of sensitization was already happening for managers, for all of employees. A lot of reverse mentoring was happening. We introduced humor. We invited a lot of LGBT plus artists who would train our 10,000 plus managers through humor. And that was taken so beautifully, because when you enjoy something, when you relish something, you're so much more open to learning. And that resulted in a huge increase in the number of allies that we have. So that is one. And this year, especially in India, with the second wave that has hit us, this is definitely, as we know, is much more sad than what has happened last year. It's much more challenging. So this year we've really focused on wellness, physical and mental. We've created groups to help people, especially from the marginalized community, whether it's oxygen beds, any kind of support that is needed, any kind of counseling. We've introduced coach on call, not just for employees, but their family members as well. They can talk to their experts, and talk to them, not just about their career and things at work, but anything that touches them personally. So these little bits have changed for us, but overall our policies have been inclusive for many, many years. Very proud of that, never taken that for granted. We live each day to be more inclusive. Thanks, Harish.
That's amazing, Prachi. Thank you so much for sharing this. Dwight, I would quickly ask you one of my last few questions. This is working with pride. Can you throw some more light on working with pride and how working with pride can bring change or help organizations? And within working with pride, I also know about leading with pride. So can you also throw some light on that, if possible, quickly, please? Dwight, you're on mute.
Thank you. Working with Pride is just a large collaboration of D&I professionals and advocates, helping each other come up with better program and practice. And for D&I, 100 plus people are participating, and people can contact us on our website to find out more information. Workingwithpride.org. Leading with Pride is our leadership development program. It's a program designed to help, right now it's focused on LGBT, QAI, but it helps minorities become leaders and lead the change that they need to, that we need to see in the world. And it can find information about Leading with Pride on our website as well.
Thank you so much, Dwight, for that. And I would here personally like to advocate for Leading with Pride as well. Last year, I was a part of the chapter, and transformational. This is all I'll say. This is really nice for all the people out there who want to battle out few of their inner saboteurs. This will help you with it. Here, I would like to take a pause myself and ask if we have any questions from the audience before we can sum it up with our leaders. So can we have the audience questions, if at all there are any, please, on the screen? I shall read it out once they are. Oh, so here we have one from Kamalpreet Majher. Kamalpreet wants to know that what can we as young audience members do to become DEI advocates? I think I'll open the panel directly, and you all can take it up one after the other, whoever wants to answer this one.
Can I take a dig at it? All right. So Kamalpreet, congratulations for asking that question, and that clearly, shows that you have a huge amount of awareness to be able to make an impact. So start where you are and start meeting people where they are. You can make a difference. I don't know what you do, you study or you work, but wherever you are, at home or at work, speak up. There are millions and millions of people that you see. Neither do they know their own rights, nor do they speak up for others. So you start bringing that awareness right from where you are. And then I would genuinely suggest that join an organization which supports inclusion, which you want to do a particular group inclusion or in general diversity inclusion for all marginalized group, depends on what you like, but start that. But most importantly, start from wherever you are. It could be just speaking up for the help who comes at home, speaking up for just generic comments that sometimes people make at dining table. Stand up, speak that this is not right, and maybe there's a different way to look at it. and that makes a huge difference. So congratulations for asking that question. That's lovely curiosity, and don't let it die, Kamalpreet.
Anyone else from our panel? Thanks, Prachi. Anyone? Oh, we have the next question. But before the next question, does anyone want to take this one up with Prachi?
Sure. So very quickly, right? I think Kamalpreet, so if you're actually working in one of the organizations and you see that there's an opportunity, absolutely step up. And I think where we always need more help, right? There's no question about that. We always need more perspectives, more input, more people contributing in so many different ways, right? And I think if you're in an organization that gives you these avenues, absolutely leverage those avenues. Barclays has so many different ways of expressing yourself, of contributing, and I'm sure all the other organizations here as well do, right? So take advantage of that. If you're not in an organization and you want to do something externally, reach out to various sort of NGO type organizations, I would say, while you also look at career choices, right? Try and build an organization that you'd like to work in, or try and find an organization that you'd like to work in. And at the same time, look at opportunities externally, right? Where you can make a difference, because our society is evolving very rapidly. And I think this whole period is a very critical inflection point, right? Where people have to speak out, people have to make their opinions and the zeitgeist of New India really visible, right? That's the only way we can drive change.
Thanks so much, Krishna. I think we can move on to the next. Oh, Dwight, you want to say? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just add a little bit to the great answers they've had so far. And I think in addition to that, think about what your team that you're in, what the objective is, and look at your team members and realize that in order to make the best possible team performance and the best possible team decisions, you need the unique contribution of everybody on your team. Nobody on your team is just a robot doing tasks. They all have a unique contribution, and you figure out, even if you're not the team leader, you figure out what those unique contributions are and work to get them included in a staff meeting. Ask for someone else's opinion on from a particular perspective. Take action to make sure that all of the unique and valuable perspectives from everyone else on your team is included. And by doing that, you'll see your team performance pull together, and you'll find yourself in a better position to even do more of that type of influencing.
Thank you so much for that, Dwight. I think that's very essential. Can we have the next question up on the screen? I shall read it out. This one's from Manveen Kaur. She asks, or they ask, your companies seem like great places to work. What are the ways in which qualified candidates from the D&I spectrum can apply to your organizations?
Please write to me on LinkedIn, and I'll make sure that your resume goes to my recruitment team.
I was about to say the same.
Absolutely.
All our positions are posted on public portals, both on the website and on LinkedIn, as well as through the community and through references. We do take in resumes, even for positions which aren't open yet, but we advocate to create roles for people who are qualified and we believe can add value to the organization and can have enriching careers.
Thanks so much.
Same thing with Barclays, right? We post all of the open roles on LinkedIn. Our website actually is very comprehensive. You can search for jobs along multiple accesses. So definitely have a look at that. And also, if you, absolutely can reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to do so. And I think we're also looking to work with organizations in terms of running job fairs, right? And we're looking at the logistics of that and how to sort of do it with sensitivity and sort of the right level of confidentiality and all of that. So it's still a work in progress, but that's something that we are looking at.
Thanks for that answer, Krishna. And I think to add on to this, Manveen, what I'd like to also say that to become more valuable to the company, I think a medium such as Leading with Pride has been provided to you again. I shall advocate for this because I've been through this and this has really been helpful. I have been able to take a lot of stands and a lot of actions within my own company where I work. I work with Athos India. And in Athos, I have been able to initiate some conversations and discussions that were not happening till now. And all thanks to Leading with Pride. So you can also get in touch with Manveen, with Dwight, and he can help you out with Leading with Pride. And after that, I think you'll be able to get in touch with all of our panel members and have a great career and be of value to the company as well. Having said that, we can then move on to the next question if we have any. Okay, we have one which says discrimination and marginalization takes place on complex multiple dimensions of caste, class, gender, race, and so on. DEI needs an intersectional lens. What do panelists have to say about this? Anyone can take this up.
Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge. Sorry, go ahead, Prachi.
Go ahead, Krishna. Please go ahead, Krishna.
Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge this is absolutely true, right? And the first step is acknowledgement. Yes, this is right. It's a huge problem. It's a very complex problem, right, as you defined it. And at this point, what we're doing is trying to chip away at it from different angles, right? We're looking at it from a generation perspective, old and young. We're looking at it from a culture perspective. We're looking at it from disability, gender, LGBT, all of that. Of course, caste is huge, right? And it's a big problem. And we really haven't been able to roll our sleeves up and tackle it effectively. And we're open to suggestions, open to that conversation in terms of how we can do that with sensitivity and not make the problem worse, right? Because I think some steps that have been attempted in the past by governments, by organizations, and so on, have been with the right intention, but have actually achieved negative outcomes. So we're willing to listen, which is step one, where we acknowledge the problem, and we're trying to tackle the components of it that we see addressable, attackable, and sort of accessible to us.
That's great, Krishna. Prachi, you were saying something.
Adding to what Krishna said, intersectionality is definitely the lens that we look from in diversity and inclusion at IBM. And last year when George Floyd got murdered, and then Black Lives Matter, everything started. So we didn't really work in the US. For example, Arvind Krishna, our CEO, wrote to the US Congress on what we can do through AI to help support being more inclusive as a country. And that is a time when we started a campaign called Embrace. At that time when many people started working from home, and we started a campaign where everybody said families come first, wellness come first. It's okay to be not camera ready at all times. So making people comfortable in the new environment. It's okay for people to be seen behind you when you're on video. Things like that started happening. We started using AI a lot more worldwide, not just in the United States. For example, looking at if people are getting promoted, if people are getting hired, if people are leaving, then which is the group where people are leaving from? Is it that we have more women leaving the organization? Is it that women are getting less promoted? Is it the LGBT plus people who are not getting promoted, or they're leaving because of any bias happening in a new environment? So that started happening, and that needed a lens of intersectionality. You look at a woman who was dark and disabled, and all of those details were completely looked at. So diversity and inclusion is not really complete without intersectionality. And the third thing that we did for that is worldwide we're facilitating Be Equal workshops where all our people managers at all levels, right from Arvind Krishna at the top to every people manager, till right to the end, is getting into conversations. We have learning facilitators getting into conversation with them about identity. How do I identify myself? How do people see themselves in the context of the world they have around? How a manager sees how people belong to the organization, whether my team members really belong to the organization, do they feel a connect with the organization? And the third most important thing is, what is my behavior as a manager? How can I change that to build a very inclusive and diverse environment at home? So what my point is that a big thing happened last year in the United States, and it didn't really, the solution was not just there. The problem lies everywhere in different shapes and forms, like Krishna said about caste in India. It is so big, and our Be Equal workshops definitely talk about caste. Which are the castes or religions that we completely don't see in senior positions, in decision-making roles? We don't just see them. And these are important topics, very uncomfortable topics, I can promise you, because I am in most of those workshops. Very uncomfortable topics where people bring up these discussions. Important to have. It is important to talk about caste, religion, sexual orientation, marital status, everything at work. It is absolutely important, and not just performance.
Very true. And I think after what happened in the US, the whole movement of Black Lives Matters, and even after that, we saw some atrocities on Asian communities. The whole aspect of BAME came into highlight, where we have Black, Asians, Middle Easterns, all the minorities, and how everyone is treated equally or not came into the question. And that was so great. Dwight, Param, your comments on this?
I think the only other thing that I would add here is, the intersectionality also comes into our analysis for compensation and gender pay gaps, promotion and career growths and things like that. As Prachi mentioned, some of those analysis, as well as understanding what kind of representation intersectionality comes at various career stages, leadership, representation and things like that. But at the same time, we're also trying to see that to provide for, how to say, fence around and provide people safe spaces, how can we convert some of those into guidelines and policies, and do manager programs? So we have extensive awareness and manager programs. We have something called a new manager program. So anybody who gets promoted or starts to lead a team it's a mandatory program, no matter even if you're in billing roles, to go through this program to understand the nuances of intersectionality and how biases play out, either inherently or deep rooted, or even in conversations, team meetings, behaviors, everyday decisions of how leaves are being approved, how roles are being distributed within the team and things like that. So we take it very seriously. It's something that we have started to make conscious, interpretation and awareness, as well as a journey in the last 1 or 2 years. And we have a long way to go, but I'm glad that we have started to acknowledge it and start seeing it and looking at it from that lens.
Thanks, Param. Dwight, would you like to add here? I think your input will be very crucial also, right from the other side of the yes.
I think that in support of what's been said so far is that the big intersectionality of all diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging is about engaging and using the most powerful human resources that you can. And And so much of diversity and inclusion is about getting the things out of the way that prevent us from being able to leverage who we are as humans, and leverage the people in our community, leverage the people in our teams. And if you think at it from that perspective, where we're at now is just the beginning, and we're always learning, and we're always trying to do better, and we're getting a better language and better tools, and so I think that's the key intersectionality. And I would also like to comment, many of the people in the audience are going to be of the LGBTQIA community. And I think this community, like many others, but particularly this community, is about intersectionality, because we are part of every caste, we are part of every gender, and we understand what it's like to be in between all these social categorizations. And so we're in a unique position, I think, to be able to lead change, to be able to be empathetic with what it is like to be in all these different categories and experiences, and so I think we're in a position to be able to lead a lot of the positive change that needs to happen.
Thanks so much. Thank you all for that. I'm conscious of time, but before we can break the session out, I want to further ask you one last time the future of DEI in coming years. How do you see DEI evolving in India or globally, and how do you see things moving ahead? Panel is open to all.
I think it's a constantly evolving conversation, right? We as humans are evolving every day, and that is what we call as generations, right? Our surroundings are evolving, our environment is evolving. Look at what has happened to us in the last 2 years, right? Our whole concept of what workspaces look like and what traditional workspaces would look like is now forever changed, right? So I think, like all other human practices and human experiences, even the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion is going to evolve. I think some of us, and I hope many, many more of us, become the voice of change. And we speak up for that change, and we advocate for that change. And we also call out biases and give everybody a little bit of that lift that is required for the equitable discussion. And I think we will be in a better place as we move along this curve.
So I think it's an environment of continuously raising the bar, right? And Prachi and Param talked about gender reassignment surgery. Barclays has that as well. I think it's becoming table stakes now. Similarly, having gender-neutral bathrooms, having partners covered under your insurance coverage, it's becoming table stakes. Barclays has that sort of thing. IBM has it. Publicis has it. It's now becoming the norm, right? People have to expect that. So what's next, right? And I think that intersectionality conversation in terms of tackling more of the difficult conversations, looking at what is equity, how do you push towards continuously bringing out the best in people, right? Continuously looking at where are people disadvantaged, how do we remove those barriers, and how do we continuously raise the bar in terms of making people feel welcome, making our companies feel more like families, making people perform optimally because they feel welcome, because they feel happy, right, in the work environment. That's really the continual evolution of DEI. And it's up to us to continue to push that envelope.
Okay, I'll go next. There are two things about this. One is, of course, D&I future is very, very bright, but we have to be very careful about the D&I fatigue as well, because there can be a fatigue, and there is in some parts there is fatigue where people, for example, women, worth worth any talent do not want a promotion just because of the gender. So companies have to be companies have to be really careful while making these policies and processes, that anything which has huge number of targets on promotions, on hiring for the managers, should not feel like a push, but an understanding that expands over time. So we have to be very, very careful of that. Otherwise, it will become a very short-term goal of, because we have to reach a goal, let me just promote somebody who's from a diverse community. So that is one. The other thing very strongly is that right now we've not even just, we just touched the surface by saying that a woman, a veteran, somebody who's Black, somebody who's Aboriginal person, or a LGBT person, or people with disability is on the surface. We're looking at the numbers at every level: promotions, increment, hiring, attrition. But there should be a time where these things become the usual. These things become the environment. It's, inclusion becomes inclusion is like oxygen in any work environment, in the world outside as well. So that is a time when it will go deeper, and then we'll come to finer nuances of inclusion, and that will take a completely different shape. So the future is very bright. We need to keep expanding our mindsets. There is no end to it. I can't at this point in time, even in 100, 200 years, foresee a time where diversity and inclusion will not be needed anymore. Its shape will keep changing. So all we have to be careful about is two things: not let anyone get fatigued by it. Second is keep expanding our mindsets. It has to change from the outside. It can't just remain women, LGBT plus people with disabilities, and a few other communities. There's much more diversity around, and we need to be inclusive of them all.
Thank you so much. Dwight, we can have the final word from you. Dwight, you're on mute.
The future of D&I. I think we're going to be building more tools in terms of language and understanding. I think we're going to understand more about how our systems. I'll use talent acquisition as an example. We're in an age where we have thousands of applicants sometimes for jobs, and we use broad categories to be able to select the few finalists, and we're going to have to look at what we're missing by sometimes by these categories. Does education mean what we really think it means? Is there a way that we have a unique, powerful contribution that we're missing today that we can get from someone who doesn't have the same education as everybody else on the team? I think there's a lot of new areas there that we will see in the future by the leading companies. In the meantime, all companies in some way, shape, or form are going to have to figure out how to leverage diversity and inclusion in order to stay competing in the modern world.
Thank you so much. This is great, Dwight. Thank you so much for this. Well, this brings us to the end of the panel discussion. I'm conscious of time, as I say again. I would like to thank our panel members, Param, Prachi, Krishna, and Dwight, for the support and getting time out today to connect with me and everyone else in the audience. As a gesture of gratitude, we will send you coupons from our sponsor, Queer Bazaar. Do support our queer business in the making. I'd also like to thank our sponsors once again: IBM, Barclays, working with Pride, Publicis Sapient, leading with Pride, Queer Bazaar, for the support, and also to all the individual contributors out there. Thank you so much. Lastly, thank you, audience, for an engaging time. I'm so glad we had questions on how to become the future leaders of DEI for tomorrow and the intersectionality as well. And I hope that you all join us at 7:30 p.m. for Out and Loud Pune International Queer Film Festival 2001 opening ceremony, where we have multiple performances for you to enjoy. This is Harish Panchbhai signing off.